morning to those of you tuning in to our Witness Stone dedication. I'm the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Chapman, and it is my joy and honor to welcome you to this moment that has been literal centuries in the making. I'd like to introduce Dennis, who is the Executive Director of the Witness Stones Project, who will get us started.
Thank you, Reverend John, and thank you for all of you who've come here. I'm especially excited to see the students and listen to the work that you did. The Witness Stones Project started about 4 years ago in Guilford, Connecticut, where we realized that we had a wonderful collection of homes that we have names on and dates, and all those homes, the names on them are directly related to the white owners of the homes, and we wanted to somehow remember the enslaved people who lived there. And a friend of mine came back from Germany after seeing the Stolperstein and said, which are stones that are put in the ground where Jews lived freely before they were kidnapped and murdered under the Holocaust. And he said, could we remember that here? Could we remember the enslaved people using a similar form? And right now, we're putting stones in across Connecticut. We're in 10 communities. We've been working with 15 schools, and we're so excited to be up here in Windham County in the northeast section of the state and putting the stones in here. I'm especially thankful for Mr. Craig and Mr. Lewerk, who led this effort here. Joe, you contacted me probably over 2 years ago and said, could we bring this to Killingly? And I thought, what a wonderful place to put a stone. And by working with Joe, then working with Maggie Weaver, I stumbled over fantastic stories and interesting stories, and for everybody from the indigenous people who lived here first to the original European settlers and to the enslaved people who helped build this community. And just to put it in perspective, when we think about the Danielson family and their wealth, Mr. Danielson, one of the most valuable things he left at his death were 5 enslaved people. They were valuable because they helped build this community. They helped build the dams, they helped work the fields, they helped clear the fields. So the wealth that this community started with was started on the backs of enslaved people. And if we can remember that and appreciate that, it helps us understand more what our duties are today to help make a more fair and just society. So I'd like to reintroduce Reverend John to have an invocation.
When Dennis first came to me about the story of Cuffy, he mentioned a name that's really key in the life of our church, Mary Danielson. We'll hear more about Mary Danielson, but Mary and James were founding members of our congregation in 1715. James Danielson is listed on the original manifest of the first church from October 19th, 1715, which was founded just up Route 12 from here. And in 1732, Mary Danielson gave us this cup. It is the one artifact that connects us to the original first church in Killingly, and after the first church went dormant and restarted as our congregation, this was the piece that was given that connected us to that early congregation. At the bottom it says, the gift of Mrs. Mary Danielson to the first church in Killingly, 1732. And it's got a silversmith stamp of George Hanners, who, rumor has it, although we've not been able to solidify it, was an apprentice to Paul Revere. Kind of cool. So when Dennis said Mary Danielson, I thought, oh, we know Mary. We, in fact, go on a grave tour every year, and we go see her grave. She's buried in Westfield Cemetery. And then I started piecing it together, and I realized that the money that bought this cup for our church was the same money that paid for people to be enslaved. Not the people who were enslaved, of course, but the people who sold them. And then it was undeniable that we were connected to the story of slavery, even in New England, where it's easy for us to think we got it right earlier than the rest of the country. The truth is we benefited from the slave economy long after we abolished slavery in our immediate region. And this is an artifact to that bit of history. Complicated, painful, and real. So I invite you to pray with me. If you're not the praying type, that's cool. I am, and we're in a church, so we're going to do it real quick. and we'll keep going. Let's pray. Almighty God, we confess to you the ways that we have blown it, the mistakes our ancestors made, the way they did not see the full humanity of others, the way they enslaved people, the way they benefited from the slave economy, and the way we benefit from it still today. May this memorial be a small token, a small step in the direction of reconciliation, that we might go forward open-eyed, telling the truth, having hard, important conversations, always moving us toward justice and you. Amen.
I'd like to next invite up Principal Elise Giari from Killingley High School.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here this morning to share this wonderful experience today with all of you. The Witness Stone Project and the work of the educators and project managers are some very important work, especially in this area in Killingley and the New England area. At Killingley High School, we have been working to educate our students, faculty, and staff around the local history, and this honoring of a slave from this area just enhances and provides real context for our understanding of what slaves had to endure and what our students, families, and friends continue to endure in this area. Killingley High School will remain committed with the continued work of our local NAACP chapter, as well as partners like the Witness Stone Project to educate our students and community members. I would be remiss today if I did not thank Mr. Lewick and Mr. Craig for their leadership in this project and for guiding our students during this project. Well done to our students who have persevered through an extremely challenging school year. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to next invite Maggie Weaver to come up, Killingley Town Historian, and we've getting to be pretty good friends over COVID, Maggie.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you especially for participating in this program. The Danielson family was not the only slave-owning family in Killingley and in northeastern Connecticut. There were a few others, Fullers, Prudence and Nell Alexander, and their names started out as Alexanders, so they're more difficult to trace in the records. The Hutchins, the Spaldings, and across the river in Brooklyn, Malbone was a big slaveholder, and he had come from Newport. So the people in this area grew up seeing slaves. Now, what they thought about it, I don't know. But the slaves definitely helped contribute to the founding of this town of Killingley. I have only a few quick words to say. In the words of Father John O'Neill from St. James, be kind. I think it's important that no matter what, we respect everyone. So be kind. And my own thought is, let Killingley be known as a kind and caring community. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. And next I'm going to invite up Steve Armstrong, who is the Social Studies Coordinator for the State Department of Education. And he's going to say a few words.
good morning. I do represent, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I represent the State Department of Education here. And I just want to say, first off, you folks, I'm guessing you know, but congratulate at some point today Dennis for all the fine work he's done on this project. Because Dennis has done this in this community and others communities, and he's done fantastic work. And I'd want to give also thanks to the community of Killingly and to the students that have worked on this. You know, there's a lot of projects of this nature, and it seems a lot of them, either students are doing them or the community's doing them, and there's no connection between the two. And I think what's cool about projects like Witness Stones are it brings the two communities together. So that to me is a cool thing. Also, if you follow history stuff, you know there's a bit of controversy today about what history should be taught. You know, should we be teaching only the good stuff? Should we, you know, and I think a project like this, in a respectful way, shows that there's things in the past that probably people haven't paid a lot of attention to. Not all of it good. But I think if we want to have a complete view of history, and if we want to really know what happened in the past, it's projects like this that make that happen. So kudos to the community, kudos to the school, and well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And next, we're going to invite up Lois Brunush from the Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us today. You know, you're standing in the middle of the Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor. It's a region that's framed by the Quinebaug and Shetucket rivers, and it encompasses 26 towns in eastern Connecticut and 9 towns just over the border in Massachusetts. There are 55 national heritage areas around the country. Each one has a unique landscape and different stories to tell. Our region was designated a National Heritage Corridor back in 1994. It was designated by Congress at the federal level because of our rich history and our important natural resources. So since then, for more than 25 years, our organization has been working hard to protect our natural resources and to share and celebrate our region's history. But as so often happens over time, we tend to repeat the history and the stories that we grew up with, the narratives that are most familiar, the ones that are comfortable, and we ignore the uncomfortable truths. Truths that don't fit the narrative that we know. Slavery, like you said, Reverend John, not here. That was a Southern problem. Yet here we are, honoring an enslaved person who walked these very streets, a person whose story has been hidden in the shadows, in the darkness, and whose story never appeared in the history books that I grew up with. In her inaugural poem, The Hill We Climb, Amanda Gorman concluded, "There is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." Killingly High School students and the people that have supported you, you are the light. You shined a light on a hidden past. You've given a voice to someone who was silenced, and you've added new perspectives to the stories that we tell about ourselves, and we're all richer for it. And by sharing a more complete and complex history, you've also shined a light on a path to the future, a future that's more diverse, more inclusive, with equity and justice for all. So you're trailblazers here in the Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor, and you've set an example for other schools to follow. So thank you for all of this. We're grateful. And as you go forward, stay inquisitive. Ask those hard questions, dig deeper to find the truth. And may you always be brave and be the light. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. And now I'm going to invite up Mr. LeWerk and Mr. Craig, or the students, or however you want to do it. So we won't say anything. We just continued planning this till yesterday, but.
So Mr. Craig and I flipped a coin, and I won, I think, is how we're looking at it. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I'm here, and he's standing beside me. But good morning, and thanks for being here. Students present today represent their peers from my Honors American Citizenship classes and Mr. Craig's AP US History course. They've worked during the month of May, as was mentioned, to understand the history of enslaved people in the U.S. generally, but more specifically here in Connecticut, as well as one individual, Cuffy, right here in Killingly. This hasn't been an easy year for learning, and the students who engaged in the Witness Stone project should be commended for their efforts to do history and take civic action to help restore the humanity of someone who was denied that right in life. So it seems like ages ago that I heard about the Witness Stone project, though it's hard to pinpoint exactly when that was. I think Dennis has been in the news and on the radio and such many venues here in the last year especially. But I think it might have been through the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. But whenever it was, the idea resonated with me since I was familiar with the Stolperstein program in Germany. And saw students actively engaged in doing such history and civic engagement firsthand while I was in Germany. So for those not familiar with the Stolperstein, it literally means stumbling stone. So that should give you some clue as to kind of the pitfalls of doing history, especially controversial history. The students that I happen to be familiar with lived in what was formerly East Germany. So they encountered a community that was resistant to their efforts to memorialize the Jewish population of their town who'd been murdered by the Nazis. So the communist government and the population generally had ignored the impacts of the Holocaust for more than 4 decades of communist rule. So this is sort of my long-winded recognition that for students and teachers, doing real history is hard and not without controversy, but it's still incredibly important and necessary. So I'm grateful then that the Friends of Learning in Killingly funds, with the support of Ms. Scary, the Killingly principal, provided Mike and I the seed money to engage with Dennis and the Witness Stone project on this first ever student effort in Eastern Connecticut. I know very frequently, and this is not a ding on the states, but very frequently we're the other Connecticut, the one that's kind of forgotten, because we're on the other side of the river here. So I think it's good that we are the first here in the eastern side of the state, especially in the quiet corner. So I'm also thankful for the energy and enthusiasm that I've seen students demonstrate in working on the project. And Mike and I look forward to working with the Witness Stone project next year and allowing more students to do real history and at the same time provide some small justice to those formerly enslaved in our community. And by our community, I'm talking about the greater Killingly community, because we're lucky enough to have students from throughout the region, especially through our ag program, and of course, Brooklyn students who have Killingly as a school of choice. So here's my other plug for Killingly. Woodstock Academy has not started this program yet. So. At any rate, I'd like now to introduce a student who has graciously volunteered to share a little bit about what he learned about Cuffy, and it's similar to what a lot of other students had written, but Josh Torrey was brave enough to volunteer, so come on up, Josh, and happy to hear from you.
I wrote a biography, a little bit about what Cuffy's life might have been like, or was probably like, and this is that biography. Cuffy was an enslaved African who had at one point served the Danielson family here in Killingly. He, like other slaves, was treated with little respect. The Danielson family used dehumanization and paternalism to justify their mistreatment of another person. The family thought that because his skin color was different from theirs, they needed to do, and let me say that again, sorry, I'm nervous. The family thought that because their skin color was different from theirs, he needed to be told what to do, and all of his decisions needed to be made for him. They failed to recognize that Cuffy was as much of a person as everyone from the Danielson family was. Cuffy served many masters. He was likely born in Africa and taken to Barbados, where he was probably forced to harvest sugar. We determined that he was likely born in Africa because of his name. Many people from Africa at this time gave their children names based on the day of the week or season they were born in. This is the case for Cuffy. His name means Friday. After harvesting sugarcane in Barbados, he was shipped to Boston in 1727. Laws in Massachusetts at the time said that if you held an enslaved person for longer than a year, then you would be required to pay tax on that person. This incentivized the frequent moving of enslaved people and was likely why Cuffy was brought to Killingly in 1728 after being purchased by Mary Danielson, the wife of James Danielson, one of the original settlers in Killingly. In Killingly, he was enslaved by James Danielson. At this time, although we do not know his age, Cuffy was likely to be in his late teenage years. In the probate inventory in 1734, Mr. Danielson's enslaved people were listed under the same category as the oxen and cows in which he owned. Also in that inventory, Cuffy is not listed as one of the slaves, so it is likely that Mr. Danielson changed his name. This is yet another way in which the Danielson family showed paternalism towards their enslaved workers. From there, Cuffy and the other slaves were likely to be passed down to Samuel Danielson, who was given a majority of James Danielson's estate. In Mr. Danielson's will, there was no mention of freedom or transfer of agency for his slaves. In fact, they weren't even mentioned in the will. We can predict that Cuffy would not have been alive during the American Revolution and would have been enslaved for his entire life, though it is likely his children were given some sort of agency in their lives. We can presume that Cuffy was married and had children who might have worked for the Danielson farm. Although they might have been sold to another nearby owner, the trends of slavery in Killingly and the Connecticut area towards freeing slaves. Still, the Danielson family was late to free their enslaved workers and held some until 1810. Although we do not know everything about Cuffy's life, we can determine many aspects of his life which were probably true. We can do this based on the trends of the time and the actions of the Danielson family. It is important to recognize the mistakes of our past and acknowledge and learn from them. In this way, we can try to restore some humanity that was taken from the slaves in the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much. When we put the materials together and send them off to teachers, we hope that something as good as that comes out of it. So thank you and all the other students who work so hard to help us understand the life of Cuffy. I think Maggie Weaver and I really feel how this is just a start for Killingly and how we have so many other opportunities too. But I think starting with Cuffy, the first known enslaved person that we know of, it opens the door to tell other stories and really for the community, and so happy to be here at the church, but the whole community to embrace these stories and help us all learn about the past. So thank you again. So Reverend John, if you'd like to start the procession outside, if that's okay, and we can, I see there's a pre-dug hole, so that's wonderful.
So for those of you who are tuning in remotely, we invite you to come see the stone installed. It'll be right in front of our front steps at 210 Main Street. and it'll be there in perpetuity. So I hope you will come and take a moment to remember the legacy of slavery, the stories and lives that have gone untold, and then to commit to doing better. So we're going to sign off now. We're going to head out. We can't live stream outside, so come see it for yourself, and thank you for joining us.